Hello there, welcome to the next installment of Exploring Nature with Riley. Today is August 24th and we're here in the woods looking at this nice tree with a hole in it. And let's see what's inside. A little toady. So, just take a closer look at it. I've spoken before about toads, but maybe I could talk more. So you can see right now he's puffing himself up with air. That's their defense mechanism to make themselves look bigger. This one's a little bit upset at me. And then we use the strategy I talked about earlier. Looking at the chin, you can see it's a little bit translucent here. So that means that it's a male. Alright, here we go. See these two big mushrooms here. At first glance they look like they'd be a typical oyster mushroom. Belonging to the genus Pleurotus. This one's got a little bit ruffled, I don't know why, but it's growing out of this wood. See, it's like a nice big meaty stem. You look under, the thing that would distinguish this from an oyster mushroom is that it's got these nice white gills, but they stop right here instead of running all the way down the stem until they kind of disappear. So that's what is featured from a typical oyster mushroom that's in the genus Pleurotus. But this one is called an elm oyster mushroom, which a lot of people would consider not to be an oyster mushroom, even though it's named the same way, but it's just not in the same genus, and it's considered to be not as good to eat as regular oyster mushroom, not as tasty, but it still is edible, and a lot of people do like it. And if you look at this one over here, see an example of the beautiful world they have in the ecosystem. You can see there are a bunch of these little tiny fruit flies down there that are laying their eggs. Oh, I moved it and it scared them away. Oops. You see those little flies with the red eyes? And if we look on the underside, I bet there's going to be a ton of maggots living in here. Here, let me rip a piece off so you can see the inside. Look at that. They've eaten it up a lot. Those little holes where all the maggots were. So they're also providing a home. You can see it. Oh, look in there. You can see all the parts that were eaten by the tiny maggots that are going to grow up and do the same thing. And another benefit this has is that as the flies land on the gill area, some teeny tiny microscopic pores stick to their legs, and then when they fly to their next location, they drop the spores on whatever they're landing on. So it also helps, they're both helping each other with their reproductive life cycle. So this is the elm oyster mushroom. Alright, you can see this tree has been eaten up by termites or carpenter ants or something like that. And on this tree is a mushroom type of conch that it will start small and it will keep growing a new layer each year to form rings. And you see that the termites or whatever goes there also got into this, and you can see each of the layers that it produced from all the years that it's been alive. So if we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I don't know, a rough estimate, 7 years maybe, probably more because I can't really, they ate a lot of it, I can't really see it very well. But yeah, it's an example of the different layers within the conch mushroom. Alright, over here is this tree, which is called the Ailanthus tree, and it's probably one of my favorite trees because it hosts a type of insect during the larval stage called the Ailanthus webworm moth, which we can see here. They're named that because they're specialists. They only eat this type of tree, and they live together as a family and make a big web around the tree for protection and eat the leaves. So over here you can see some caterpillars that are, you can see varying sizes of caterpillars. There's a very tiny one right here. I don't know if you can see it. There's even a bigger one, and then these big ones are probably going to pupate soon. So those are the various instars. And then here is one that has pupated right in here. So they just live together as a family, and you can see that they eat a lot during their lifetime. Here's an old one. All the ones are probably adults now. And then right here, if it won't fly away, here's what an adult Ailanthus webworm moth looks like. Right under this leaf. So this one's probably coming here to lay eggs and continue for the next generation. So we can see all the stages of the life cycle. There's probably a bunch in here as well. Yeah, I don't know if it shows up very well, but yeah, that's the Ailanthus webworm moth. Alright, it's early September, things are starting to cool down, and just fatten up before they go into hibernation. So first thing we see here is this leopard slug. It's the biggest slug in North America. It's the biggest slug in North America, but it is actually an invasive species, so it's technically not from North America. But this guy is actually in his home. There's a turnover log. These guys tend to forage and then return to the same place every day and make their own home. So that's the giant leopard slug. Over here is the beautiful yellow flowers. This is called a Rudbeckia plant. And if you look closer, there's this type of aphid all over it called the goldenglow aphid. These guys are specialists, which mean that they only feed on the Rudbeckia plant. And they belong to an order of insects called Hemiptera, which means that half wings, because half their wings are leathery. And some characteristics of these guys are that they have a proboscis in which they attach to the plant and drink the sap out of it. As you can see, pretty much their whole body is detached from it except for their proboscis. And they have an incomplete life cycle. So they go through different stages of nymphs, different instarts of nymphs instead of the making a pupa. And you can see the empty shells from when they molted and the various stages. Some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller. A cool fact about these aphids is that you can see all these these aphids living together. They're all sisters, cousins, aunts, mothers, and grandmothers. They're almost all female. And one female will start a little family on a piece of a stem, and she will actually give live birth. An interesting thing about aphids is that sometimes when they're born, they're pretty much already have another baby growing inside of them. So then when they become an adult, they're going to give birth again. This isn't for all Hemiptera, it's just these aphids. And every once in a while, you can see there's like very few of these aphids that have wings. So when they can sense that the stem is running out of sap, some chemical changes will happen in their body. They'll end up having a baby that has wings, and then she'll fly to a different part of a plant and start a new family over there. And that's why you see them kind of distributed into these little clusters. Some of them have wings and some of them don't. And very rarely also they'll have a male just so that they could mix things up genetically. So those are the goldenglow aphids. Another thing that likes to live on Rudbeckia is the Rudbeckia gall midge. You see, galls are these lumps that are growing on these plants, usually near where the flower is. What happens is usually an insect, sometimes a fungus, will cause a little bit of damage to the plant, and the plant just tries to heal it over, and then the insect keeps causing more damage, and it grows a huge piece of tissue. So that's the pupa of an insect that grows in there. Once again, it's a specialist called the Rudbeckia gall midge. This is a pupa. You can see it has that kind of pointy tail that it twists around, and then when it's ready to become an adult, it kind of drills its way outside of the gall, and it hatches out of its pupa. So I'll show an image of that as well. So you can see some more pupa. This big ball of tissue here, they purposely form that so they have a nice big food source for them to eat, nice and fleshy, and it also provides protection because a lot of animals are not going to find them. Over here is another gall with a younger midge in it. This is the larva. He's currently feeding on the gall, and I accidentally, well, I unfortunately had to ruin his home, but you can see the feces he left behind and the little crater he ate for himself. So he's going to pupate soon and become a midge. Over here you can see an old gall where the pupae have already emerged out. You can see them little tails coming out of the holes, like right here. So this one drilled his way out and then hatched out from his pupa from the surface. And if you're wondering what a midge is, it's like a small, skinny fly. It's not a scientific classification, just kind of based on appearance. Like a mosquito was considered a type of midge, but these gall midges and mosquitoes, even though they look quite similar, as I'll show you soon. Oh, here's a dead larva, but yeah, even though they look quite similar, they are not very closely related. Like you can see, this looks quite like a mosquito, and if you saw it, you might think it was. But the only thing that they really have in common is that they're both flies. They're both in the order Diptera. So the word midge is just a description of their appearance, but not really any other scientific factors. And there's the complete life cycle of the Rudbeckia gall midge. And later on, they'll probably lay eggs on another Rudbeckia for the next generation. Over here, I found this poor caterpillar that was drowning in the water, so I took him out, and you can see he's not very active, obviously very scared. This is a caterpillar of the imperial moth. Their life cycle is that they'll live up in trees and eat the leaves, like a bunch of different trees, like an oak tree or a maple tree, stuff like that. They're generalists with some specifications, but yeah, the unfortunate thing is that what probably happened was he was on the ground. Once they're ready to pupa, they go on the ground and they make their pupa underneath the ground. So he was probably looking for a nice place to burrow himself and ended up falling into the water. And well, obviously insects can't breathe underwater. The way that they breathe is they have little holes, like tiny little pores in their body called spiracles, that will take in the air from the outside and, harvest the oxygen from it. And you can see that this is a very large caterpillar. In the grand scheme of things, it fits in the palm of my hand. It's pretty small. But as far as insects go, this is probably one of the bigger ones that you'll see. And the significance of that is that insects have a limitation on the size they could be. And when you do see large insects, such as this caterpillar, or maybe a praying mantis, or a walking stick, all those big insects you see, they're always an oblong shape. And the reason for that is because they have these pores on their skin. It's not a huge internal system with a lot of surface area within it like we have, our lungs. The amount of oxygen that they can take in is directly dependent on the surface area of the animal's skin. So they will take an oblong shape always when they're larger. So they can take more oxygen and have less tissues on the inside to distribute that oxygen to. So when you see movies with giant insects, that's impossible. Their bodies would not be able to produce enough oxygen to sustain that body. So yeah, just a little bit about insects breathing. And in this clip, you can see that he's all dried off. There's no more water obstructing his airways, and he's much more lively. Some characteristics of imperial moths is that, well, they could come in all kinds of different colors. This one just happens to be orange. They have some fine wispy hairs on them. Another thing is that they have 4 horns on the top of their head. You can see these green dots that look kind of like eyes. Those are actually the spiracles that I was talking about. And those back pair of legs are called the anal claspers, which caterpillars use to grab onto leaves that are behind them. All kinds of caterpillars have them, but in this caterpillar, it just happens to be very strong and very distinct. These things are important, and especially used by inchworms that pretty much only use their anal claspers and their front legs to move around. But this guy uses all of them. He just has some really big legs in the back there. And then finally we could see the caterpillar entering its next stage of development. He's burrowed himself under some dirt and he's preparing to pupate. Not quite yet. He's going through a stage in life called ecdysis, which I've described in reference to cicadas. These guys have the same process. What he's doing is bunching up and he's secreting some fluids that have all kinds of digestive enzymes and hormones that are going to detach his old skin from his new skin. And he's going to puff up like this to increase the blood pressure, or the hemolymph in more accurate terms, to bust the old skin off. And then he will be a pupa. So that's the imperial moth for you. Alright, so we stumbled upon the mushroom world. So far in this area I've counted at least 4 different types of mushrooms. The first one is this one, which probably either got too big for its own good and collapsed, or someone came by here and took a look at it. But this is called a rooting polypore. It's probably in the ground somewhere like over here where this hole is. And it has a big old system of roots under here. But yeah, you can see the part where it broke off. And it has this yellow stem with the pores on the underside. They're white pores, and they can get really big. And then here's the other part. The cap is kind of fluffy. This is what it would look like if it didn't fall apart. That's really big. It would be really nice if these are edible, but I think that they are not, but I'm not exactly sure. Next, you can see one that's a little bit smaller. Over here, still on the ground. Let me see if I can show you the rooting system, if I get it as low as possible. There we go, it's rooting way down into the ground. And then you can see a little offshoot that went off, and it's probably going to go to another mushroom. And it's still young, so the pores are a little bit yellowish and very small. So I'll put that back. The other one, dead man's figure. I don't know if I've covered it before, but this is a ascomycete. So it's a sac fungus and produces black spores. Over here, with the rooting theme, this is a rooting shank, I believe. The upper side is white and it's sticky. It's got these wide gills, and you can see this one goes way deep into the ground as well. Oh, I ripped it a little bit, but that will go way deep into the ground. The white, distant gills. So we've got a bunch of rooting mushrooms over here, and then yet even more mushrooms back here. You can see this bright orange color. Here, let me pick one. There's a nice little group of them going over there. It's got bright orange on top and on the bottom. It's really cool. It's called an orange mycena. I think it's technically edible, but most people would consider it not to have great culinary value. And it's sometimes a little sticky on the top. So yeah, those are my 4 different types of mushrooms in the mushroom land.